Okay, I just covered a little video here on how the web is working, and it's really doing defamation of character. But we got stuff that's come down here where Chad posted things. Here's one for June 19th. He's got the Tulsi Gabbard stuff. I had to post something on basically the Fauci stuff. It's kind of interesting. I don't know how many people know. I did my own independent research, and I got lucky. I found different posts. I did a bunch of different things, and I found different posts that would come up on subjects, and I kept constantly checking. Because sometimes people would post stuff, it would only be up for like maybe hours, then boom, it's gone. So you'd have doctors that would give statements out of China about different stuff that happened. So I'll try to condense this as much as possible. So you have a woman in China that wanted to make a super penetrator drug. This is a drug you would use other drugs. You couple it with the drug, and it helps penetrate. So you make a super serum, a super penetrative serum. That's what she was after. Fauci was investing into this. There's other people around the world that did this. You even got guys in the South. You got this guy in the South that tried to make Ebola inert. He tried to make rabies inert and all these other things and combine them together to get a penetrator. And it was like there was a big joke. If his research ever went wrong, he'd already created the zombie apocalypse with I think he had mad cow and all kinds of stuff, and he made it inert. And if it malfunctioned, it could go like south real bad. It's like, what would you end up with? Well, zombies, maybe. I don't know. It was bad. So this is the kind of stuff that people are combining, and it's supposed to be safe and inert. Is to be able to they do an inert herpes, all this other stuff. Anyhow, and moving forward, so this is what the woman was doing. She supplied the exact protein of the actual COVID disease that we ended up getting. This ended up popping out in a variant research. So she supplied copies of this stuff, samples all along the way to the CDC. So 2 years before we're hit by it, there's actually a full sample at the CDC. This used to be matter of record. Anyhow, so the different people who testified said 6 guys came in that were Chinese from a different lab. They had their own biolab, which is also a bioweapons lab. And among these you had, I can't remember the guy's name at the moment, but he basically was like a general, and it was his lab. And he had his own personal agenda, apparently. Maybe he was state sponsored, but I got the distinct impression that maybe he was like doing, he had his own ideas. But and the same guy posted stuff and was making statements publicly saying that American service personnel that were participating in games like soccer games, football, baseball, that kind of stuff, had brought the disease into the country. He laid it out totally. But we have doctors that say that he brought 5 other guys, went into this woman's lab and said, you have to give up copies of what you have for our lab. It's national security. So she has basically no choice. This guy's, ranking member of Chinese military. So she doesn't want to give it up. It's taken basically against her will. This is according to multiple pieces of testimony from people. Now, I'll fast forward to this to get to the high points. I'll get to the different various. There's a lot of points, but let me get the highest points. The 6 guys involved all end up sick. They all end up in a hospital, and 4 of them die. 4 of them die. And the test results, there was a doctor that put out a test result showing the sample of what they were suffering on. And some of them were suffering on multiple strains. In other words, something apparently impossible. Multiple strains of the disease. So apparently somehow the possibility that either they dropped a whole bunch of this stuff and got exposed to a bunch of it, or what? You would think, wouldn't they be safe? Wouldn't they be reasonably smart than just sticking it in their pocket or whatever? Or people came in. There's also the statement that other people came in from mainline Chinese government. military and whatnot, and visited these parties. And that they basically, the statement was, we were told to leave the room and this, they were going to inspect and that. The connotation is that they shot these guys up with the maximum version of this type of stuff, including the original strain, which was found according to in one of the tests, to off them, to basically kill them. We're just going to make sure these guys die of this stuff because apparently they broke the rules. So the connotations in between the lines are perhaps maybe they released this stuff big time on their own people, knowing that it was going to spread rapidly, leave the country, and then, of course, possibly, they could take advantage of releasing more of it in our country, in other foreign countries, possibly. So this is a hard thing. This lends to the suggestion that perhaps, maybe, we end up with a situation that deals with other people taking advantage of the situation. And spread pattern, I heard other people testify and say, well, but unusual spread patterns that did not fit normal biological contagion spreading patterns, anomalies. So this means other people either may have copycatted or took advantage and says, yeah, let's get a sample of this stuff. We can get rid of our enemies. So, yeah, funny business somehow, maybe, yeah, sort of. But then we also end up with a bunch of judges that end up dead, a whole bunch of weird stuff. So how did this all happen? Investigation more, yes. Are we going to ever completely get at the truth? I'm going to still say no. Can we get to more truth? I'm going to say yes. But I think it's somewhat obvious that we have a renegade factor from Chinese parties that had their own personal memes, their own personal idea of career movement in mind, and they did things. And this is an opinion I'm coming up with from the information and fragments. I had copies. I had devices. I had laptops that had copies of some of this information, of testimony, of short videos and different things that people had put out that ended up disappearing rapidly. And some of these doctors disappeared. Where did they go? Oh, well, this, that, whatever. There's a story. So, and then this one general guy, he's 2 of the 6 that survive. This guy is in and out. He disappears. He comes back. He gives news conferences. Here's the weird thing. I end up getting a hold of different videos of the guy giving news conferences. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, they're saying that this is the guy, and I'm looking right at this person. I'm like, the weird thing is this person looks like really, really close to who this guy is, but that's not him. It's just not him. So it's like, I can't jump up and say that there's something wrong with this. It just, doesn't seem right. It's not like it's AI or anything. It's like they got somebody else being this guy or something. So it's on again, off again, whether or not there's connotations and suggestions from newspaper clippings, newspaper statements to the media of whether or not the government would say certain things that would, between the lines, say, well, they weren't necessarily doing the right thing or something. An offness about the statement that it would indicate that there was something wrong, but it's been taken care of or something like that. So we still have this problem that hasn't been completely resolved. We got all these multiple locations, and more investigation needs to be done. It does. And, I'm not stepping into the overall ethical item at the moment because it would take more research to do that, to say whether or not we have people who are involving themselves in too much research without enough safeguards. But are these things happening to a certain extent? I can't say no because I've seen too much evidence that there's too many labs that basically, were operating with apparently significant amounts of certain samples, but so it's a bit of an interesting thing that way. But so when Gabbard is bringing this different stuff out, um, it's hard for me to step up and say that somehow she's wrong with some of this assessment, because my assessments are that the statements that publicly were going out were not conveying what I believed was a more complete, closer truth to something about what was happening. Were people trying to diffuse war? Okay, that could be their opinion, but where does this go? Where does this go? I mean, what's the actionability, and what's the avoiding of certain key factors that are important? Why? Well, because we got a lot of people dropping dead. There's definitely liability questions, and other items beyond that. So the sad thing is that there is not a guaranteed maximum competence respective to the COVID situation and even Fauci. So, as a citizen, I would say that I would have to be concerned. So I just, there's other stuff, but I mean, I just figured I'd say that real quick because I think it's important. I really do. Runoff election. Stay tuned. We've got more different types of polls going down.